Let's take you to Parliament now, where the vetting of President Akufo-Addo's ministerial nominees continues. Currently in the hot seat is Dr. Kwaku Afriyie, Minister Designate for Environment, Science, Technology and Innovation.
And those that have potential, by all means, we look at those things and make sure that it be applicable in the Ghanaian situation.
Finally, Mr. Chairman, I want to pick the nominees' thoughts on climate change. Yesterday, the United States returned to the Paris Climate Change Accord, and President Biden, the climate change debate. There are those who belong to the developing countries school of thought who say that we have to be measured with our targets and how we pursue climate change goals, because our developed counterparts did not have these climate change limitations and allowed them to industrialize, and they are now at a particular pedestal, and that we should be mindful how we follow them at this point in our development. Where do you stand? Are you with those who are a bit more skeptical and say that let's develop first and be a bit mindful about the climate change research outcomes, or you think that we should leapfrog and we should confront the reality of climate change and go along with the developed world and be more aggressive at adapting to the climate change threat? I want to know where you stand in this debate and where we can expect you as the policy leader on this matter, if nominated, which direction you will move this country.
Mr. Chairman, implicit in the question is the idea that this climate change issue is a binary issue. It is not. A whole lot of conversation and science is in there, built through the millennia. Those have developed. Those countries, yes, they had a free ride and used their world resources to get to where they are. And we are here. And they are telling us that, in fact, tropical world is the lungs of the world. So we should be the carbon sinks that is in the CO2 and all that. I understand all those issues. But whether we like it or not, they have leapfrogged us, and indeed, they are still spewing out those gases that is even as we speak, making that climate, aggravating the climate. So I'm very happy that President Biden has returned the US of A to the Paris Accord, because they were one of the key abusers of the planet. That said, as a minister and Ghana being a small country, I believe that whether we like it or not, climate change is real. And there's a limit to what we can do. That is why in one of the questions that we should develop climate smart systems so that we can survive as a nation. But more importantly, we demand from those countries as of right that they should do environmental restitution. And if Ghana, Nigeria, DRC and whatnot, we are the carbon sinks of this world, the lungs of this world, then we should receive recompense for that. It doesn't have to come in the form of money. It can be technological assistance to beat this same climate change and to assist it. And this thing can be costly. And in fact, they have a moral obligation to do that. So that is my take on that. It's not a binary issue. You cannot say that I'm for them or against them. Thank you, sir.
Very well. Okay, Eric. Eric is not ready. Yes, Honorable.
Honorable nominee, you have already spoken about plastic waste management, but I would like to find out from you, given the fact that plastic is a persistent pollutant which poses grave danger to our soil. A Greek, when ruminants feed on plastic, they die. I'd like to know from you whether you would not consider an outright ban on plastic, the importation, manufacture, and distribution of plastic, like the Rwandans have done. Today, if you go to Rwanda, it's one of the cleanest cities because they have banned the distribution, manufacture, and importation of plastic.
Mr. Chairman, ban plastics or not? That's a very difficult one. As a new minister entering the scientific arena, I have to immerse myself and listen to all the conversation and the arguments and whatnot, the scientific basis, the data, and the economic basis pertaining to our situation before one makes such pronouncement. What I know is that we can certainly lessen our dependency on plastics, and certain steps have been taken. We can also do recycling and all that. But whilst we are at it, we will have to monitor what other countries have done, and their situation if they have lessons for us that we can copy. After all, we are living in an interdependent world. Then we may want to consider what they've done and see whether we can do. But for now, I do not have all the information that is available to make such a categorical pronouncement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Chairman.
My second question has to do with desertification. Ghana ratified the United Nations Convention to combat desertification in 1996. But ever since we signed and ratified that convention, it appears not much has been achieved in our collective quest to deal with desertification. The hardest hit regions of the country is the northern regions, and this phenomenon has largely contributed to the north-south migration. So if you have Kwaku today, I mean, it's as a direct result of desertification in northern Ghana. If you are given the nod, what would you do to ensure that the UN Convention is fully implemented in our country to root out or at least control desertification in our country?
Mr. Chairman, again, the question even begs another question. It is not lost on anybody that desertification is a phenomenon which threatens our very livelihoods and even our very lives. And we were just talking about climate change and all. Desertification, if you take away the trees, that's the flora, you generate carbon dioxide and you contribute to the CO2.
After all the excitement of that day, I didn't want to be party to any such thing. But I did need to sit down. So I sat in the chair that I was occupying before I went to the washroom, which he happened to be sitting on. When I sat down, he started trying...
We have to go in thick. And he did.
Moving back and forth before he quickly realized that it would have unintended consequences that would not be good for him. And so he quickly stopped and froze. And at that point, I decided to restrain him from causing any further damage to himself. And so I used physical restraints to subdue him. So it was physical restraints of an obstreperous adult.
The capacity to generate energy, fertilizer and other things, products from waste. Then I can see Ghana importing from Cote d'Ivoire, Togo and others, waste. So, well, if in the interim we have to export because we don't have the capacity, we have to look at the economics of it and then give the necessary permits for that to be done. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I would like the nominee to tell us what he will do to assist the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, to strengthen its monitoring and evaluation and enforcement to follow up on whether the permits recipients are abiding by their conditions of their permits. I mean, people in the mining, telecommunications, forestry, oil and gas, and many other sectors need an EPA's permit to be able to conduct their activities. But after the permits are issued, what is done to monitor the implementation to ensure that they are actually being applied?
The consequential question is, you know, that place there is some echo problem there. You can't hear very well. What is that? What is being done? Please, can you help me?
What would you do to assist the Environmental Protection Agency to strengthen its monitoring and evaluation of the permits that they've actually issued to those who apply for those permits, whether in telecommunications, mining, forestry, oil and gas sector, and to enforce the conditions of their own legislation? After the permits are issued, do they follow up to ensure that they are actually abiding by the terms of those permits? And what would you do to assist them to strengthen the mechanisms to enforce their own legislation?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The permits have expiration dates. One of the issues is that some of them, once the permits are issued, let me admit that there's no follow-up, and even though we might have the data to see that they are renewed. Then the other problem is, capacity issue in terms of human resource. The EPA is very, very thin on the ground in the regions and the districts. In fact, before I came here, naturally, I contacted the heads of the various agencies, and one of the issues that came up was that they have a problem with recruiting staff into that area. So yes, we have to build their capacity so that they have the necessary skills even to inspect them, but also we have to put boots on the ground in terms of numbers at the operational level, because invariably these activities happen in the districts. So that is what I intend here.
Because if they do not monitor to see whether the entities are operating in accordance with the law, then it's as if they are operating only from their offices. And the mischief that this is intended to solve would still be perpetrated. Now, noise pollution is also environmental pollution, and it can even cause mental health challenges for us, particularly in these areas when people are locked down and can't have other activities to take their minds off the challenges that we're facing with COVID and all that. Our churches, mosques, nightclubs, bars in residential areas are the main sources of some of this noise pollution. What are you going to do to ensure that we minimize this scourge, which may even be affecting our health?
Mr. Chairman, noise pollution is a big and very difficult area. But that said, it doesn't mean we should not enforce the laws of the land. Because of our cultural settings, there's resistance from certain segments of society with regard to noise. So we will embark on massive public education as far as noise pollution is concerned. And in certain instances, give ultimatums and then enforce the law. I believe that as a physician, I know that, like she rightly pointed out, noise pollution is a very, very important problem in this country, but we do not appreciate it. So we should put in place systems that can even measure, because we have simple implements that can measure the number of decibels that we've gone over. But unless we have that capacity to, measure all those things, and I notice that we do not have a lot of them in place. So we have to get the law. The law is there, but consequential legislation will have to be reviewed, and then, more importantly, embark on massive education nationwide, so that we come to a point where people themselves will see the severity of the problem and be self-compliant. But then, in those instances where people are recalcitrant, we enforce the law.
My final question is, what are you going to do to promote science, technology, education, and mathematics, engineering and mathematics?
He has answered that question.
And training for girls. He's answered that.
He has answered that question.
For girls?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
On STEM. Thank you. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I'm really constrained with time because it's time for Friday prayers.
I hope prayers start soon.
Yeah, I can see that you're also praying that it starts soon. So I may be grateful if the nominee will just take my questions and then I can run out, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman. Hoping that you may ask the full house for me. I have a number of questions that relate to land encroachment with regards to CSR, that's Council for Scientific and Industrial Research. Their lands across this country are really, really being encroached. And you've served as the Minister for Lands and Forestry before, so I'm sure you are very much familiar with this. And in some instances, they are finding it very difficult to get the Land Commission to assist them to hold on to their lease. That will help them to be able to protect this. What will you do to curb this? And second has to do with innovation. I mean, in an early answer to your question, there you try to explain. We all know the importance of innovation and research work, but the current funding mechanism, if it continues, then I'm sorry, very soon nobody will be interested in, working on any research work. What innovative measures will you put in place to ensure that there's some funding, dedicated funding, to support innovation in the development of our country? And Mr. Chairman, the last group of questions I have has to do with the GMO, that's the genetically modified food. I just want to know your position on it and what is your views on all the talk about GMO. Also, SARI, that's Savannah Agricultural Research Institute, since 2012 have been researching into GMO cowpea, that in their work believe that it has the potential to curb the maruca pest destruction. They have currently even applied to the National Biosafety Authority to enable them to release this crop into the general population. But unfortunately, the Minister for Agric, Food and Agriculture on 14th March 2019, when he met the development partners, had this to say that Ghana does not need GMO to ensure food sufficiency and security. What is your view on this? I know that Professor Frimpong Boateng, your predecessor, has presented before this House a regulation on biosafety. Whilst this is happening, unfortunately, you have the Minister of Agriculture has a different view. As a medical doctor yourself, and knowing very well that you've been in this area for long, can you say that GMOs are 100% safe for consumption, for which Ghana should allow them to fester, even though I know we've done the biosafety law already? And Mr. Chairman, lastly, as you proceed to the Ministry of Environment, if this House gives you the opportunity, will you encourage CSI to continue its push on more research on GMOs, possibly against the views of the like of the Minister for Agriculture? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hope that probably, Mr. Chairman, you help me with the follow-ups. If he answers, we have to run to
Chairman, he has to go for Friday prayers. I would have to stay with the Honorable Tampule. It means you're also going. Okay, I'm obliged to support Chairman. But whilst answering where is need for Chairman for me to come in on a follow-up, I will. And I trust that the leadership on this side will allow me also. I'm not late yet. If I take my questions, I still can join in the mocks, which is around 1:30, 1:35. Thank you.
Yes, Honorable Nominee, you may take them one by one and be as short as possible.
Mr. Chairman, land encroachment. These are legal issues. We have to find out, I will have to find out what are the real issues. If we have to have recourse to the law, we will do that and take back the land. That's the answer. Funding for innovation, I think I've answered in several questions that and I even called for a decade of innovation and its antecedent funding from industry and users and the private sector, and how government should even set up a dedicated fund. So I've answered them. The GMO position, again, there are several issues in there, and to force the minister to take a position is not fair. I happen to know that the issues are not even about biosafety issues, but the ability to conserve your gene pool, the variation, because the potential to make us genetically dependent on outside sources, and it has implication even for our national security. These are the real issues, but it is not even the biological safety, so to speak, because a lot of GMOs are safe. They are safe. That as a scientist, I would say that in the USA, they use a lot of genetically modified entities, and as far as I'm concerned, their mortalities are as simple. But inbuilt there is the safety and the economics, because some of them have patented some of these things. And if you become very reliant on them, it means your genetic pool, you lose them forever. And if there's a catastrophe, you cannot go back to those things that were native to your environment. Again, if some of these things should escape into the environment, they can actually replicate themselves and populate your nation and change the flora and fauna of your nation. So when there are experts out there, we have to listen to them and see what can be done. But having said that, there are several things, researches that have improved local varieties that they are sitting on shelves, which can give comparable results to GMO identified entities that we have not even used, that I have talked to before. And then he asked about SARI. He's not here, I've forgotten. Savannah?
Yes, Savannah Agricultural Research Institute.
He says, has it run down? I forgot the question.
that they are undertaking some small studies. Will you encourage them and fund
as
them?
for the studies, they can take a permit from EPA, and if it's certified, there's always a committee on GMO. And if all the biosafety precautions are taken, studies are permitted. So
do you support them to undertake those studies?
Pardon?
Will you support them to undertake those studies?
Yes, I'm saying that the law even permits those studies to be done. As to their wide application, because before even you get a permit to do those studies, there is a committee, I've forgotten the official name of the committee, but there's always a local entity, committee of scientists who make sure that those entities will not escape into the environment and cause all the pictures that are pointed heretofore. But it doesn't mean that we cannot, at the research level, deal with GMOs. It is only when we want to deploy on commercial basis that we have a lot of issues there, and I've enumerated them. And then, that is all.
Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, he asked for your view on a particular matter on it.
On particular?
Your view on Council for Scientific and Industrial Research.
Yes. The land encroachment issue, I've said, and then it's applicable to the Kwabinya, what do you call it? Ghana Atomic Energy, GAEC too. So there are land issues there. But we have to look at the law. I mean, the law is the law. So if people have encroached and we have to deal with them, then I would be advised.
Chairman, Minister Designate, your answer is specific. You've used Kwabinya. The Honorable Muntaka wanted to find out that across the country, there is unacceptable encroachment on all Council for Scientific and Industrial Research land. What will you do if you become minister to halt the unacceptable practice?
He has answered that one. That was what he answered first, yes. He said the legal matters, so he will look at the legal matters.
But Chairman, legal matters is not enough. You have your land, they are taking it. He should tell us what he will do to secure those lands.
Preventive one, those in account, say the more the that one step we will take.
Now,
then those that are gone, we will go and retrieve them.
Translate it.
To which those that are lost, we will draw a perimeter around those that are not lost, so we secure them. And then those that have been taken, we will go and use the necessary legal instruments to retrieve them.
Yes.
I'll try and be brief. Doug, come with me to environmental impact assessment. And a huge requirement, and you know it's a basic requirement for setting up a number of setups in this country. Now, in one of my theses, it came out clearly that the EPA often subcontracts the pursuit of environmental impact assessment to private hands. And then often it turns out that it compromised. What will you do under your leadership to ensure that we don't compromise the conduct of environmental impact assessment?
Mr. Chairman, these are moral issues, moral hazards. So we have to put in place a mechanism. Those private entities who do that, either personnel or organizations, off our books, and we do not deal with them. And then indeed, if there are avenues for sanctioning, we will take that recourse. But certainly, as a believer in the private sector collaboration, I don't think we have to, because of that reason, we have to not deal with the private sector. I decried the death of personnel, that we not have. Then, on the other hand, you cannot say in absolute certain terms that even the public personnel in the public service, they might be any better.
So, the carbon trade concept, which is hugely advocated globally, and developed countries have taken huge advantage. And in our parts of the world, we seem to be lacking behind because of capacity. What is your own assessment of our drive towards building our capacity to buy into the carbon trade concept and also rake in the necessary benefits to our country?
Well, the Carbon Trade Center has been beset with a lot of problems. You know, I don't want to mention some countries' names, but I have been issued certain countries thought that it was the potential for a rip-off from the developed world to the developing world existed, and they were contesting some of the issues there and the assignments that had been made in terms of, values that have been put on certain activities. But that said, we also have a problem with tapping into that because of it's a highly technical issue. So I don't know what is happening in my ministry. If the technical impediments in terms of capacity to write or apply within the necessary format and whatnot, if we are able to do that, then I'll look at it and then make sure that next year does it so that Ghana will be able to access the fund. But my understanding is that there are certain countries who do not, even as a matter of principle, agree to that arrangement. And I don't want to mention one big country that has been mentioned heretofore before. But that said, the real issue, let me repeat, is that it's a highly technical area, and you need very, very technically competent people who are very conversant in the area so that your paper will even, or submissions will even be accepted in the first place. That's the brief that I got. But when I get there, there will be other issues. So when I get there, we will have to look at it. And then I suspect our country might also be too keen to assess it for various reasons. Because you have to also come out with certain there are preconditions to attach to it. So it's a big problem.
So maybe we'll have the conversation in detail some other time. But my last question is related to e-waste. I'm aware Germans have been helping us. If you go to Agbogbloshie now, there have been a number of interventions to get at top concerns about e-waste. I know you are also concerned and passionate about this. Do you have any predetermined programs or plans to deal with e-waste in our country?
Indeed, let me give credit to my predecessor. There are a very, very elaborate plans in Ministerial now. Some of them, like I'm saying, might even need legislative backing. And the others, the programs will have, naturally everything evolves. So when I get there, I have to look at it. And then if there are any gaps there, and if there any level that I'll have to take it to, I'm certainly interested in that area, and we will do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm done.
Chairman, thank you very much. The honorable member, what's the full name of your constituency? The constituency, how do you call it?
So also.
How many polling stations do you have?
168.
So is it true that a ballot box was burnt at coalition in the last elections?
Well, I heard reports that I was not a witness to that. Wasn't burnt, was snatched and destroyed. A mob went into it and they destroyed it.
Okay. So your collated results was less than ballot box.
Pardon?
Your collected resource was less than ballot box.
No.
Okay. It's appreciated.
Yes.
I enjoy your depth intellectually, but Minister for Environment, the Ghana Atomic Energy Commission have major constraints, indeed financial constraints. They cannot even afford payment of subscription to SKA, and then they too, loss of their land are lost. They are also suffering problems of encouragement. This is captured in the handing over notes of your outgoing minister. What will you do to address these matters? Thank you.
Well, Ghana will have to honor its international obligations and agreements that have been entered to. So, yes, I read it from the news too. So I have to find the nature of the problem and then negotiate with the Minister of Finance or whatever entity that funds are going to come from and pay up. We simply have no choice. We have to pay up. Thank you.
Chairman, thank you. I would lump it up. Plant Genetic Resources Research Institute, Bunsu, Savannah Agricultural Research Institute, Sale, Nyankala, Soil Research Institute, Kwada Sukumasi, Water Research, and then they all generally have problems. What will you do about it so that they are efficient in the delivery which they undertake? Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't hear that they are having problem with
Staffing.
Yes.
Experienced and skilled staff for those research institutes, as I mentioned.
Mr. Chairman, I believe this question has been asked in a global way, albeit in a global way before. We're losing a lot of researchers. And I've said that we have to link those institutes to industry so that their IGF could be up and some arrangements should be made so that their salaries and other remunerations could be competitive to their peers elsewhere. Now, of course, I also have to appeal to my government if we are going to make science and technology and innovation the fulcrum under which Ghana's socio-economic development revolves, that we put a premium on those people and their experience on whatnot should also count. I noticed that the Minister for Labour, I listened to that, he was calling for extension of what do you call it, the retirement age. Those things must also be factored in so that because we are living longer, and I don't want to veer into his space, but if they must make a case for it, these are the people that we need, so that they do not go, so to speak, on premature retirement, and they have the opportunity to earn extra income.
Chairman, for instance, I'm referring to handing over notes, the CSIR, in page 70 of it, is currently operating with a staff strength of 2,728, which is woefully inadequate to choose their words. And that despite technical clearance granted in 2019, some 158 staff were recruited, but they still think that they've lost a number of staff to retirement. Will you replace and make sure they have their full complement of staff? Thank you, Chair.
Indeed so, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman, I also see, and it's unfortunate that Ghana is yet to take advantage of it, palm kernel. You hear everybody talk about Malaysia, the Malaysia miracle, and they are doing well. What are we doing? And what will you do as minister to ensure that we export this in large quantities? Thank you. Based on improved research and improved quality production of those products.
Mr. Chairman, indeed, Ghana is importing oil palm products. And so our capacity is very constrained. But like the Honorable Committee Vice Chair, so to speak, as we still have capacity to make up on those deficits. And that is through improved varieties. A lot of farmers are not planting improved varieties. So the potential is there. But this one, I have to collaborate with the Minister for Agric and other entities so that this thing can be fashioned out and rolled out.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, the Forum for Agricultural Research in Africa, FARA, is headquartered in Accra by some agreements signed in October 2003, specifically October 14. The government of Ghana signed an agreement with your ministry. Has that agreement been ratified by Parliament in accordance with Article 75 of the 1992 Constitution?
Mr. Chairman, I cannot recall. There are so many activities in the legal program.
Should you get to the ministry?
So I have to find out if it has not, then of course I will.
Should you get to the ministry and it's not been ratified, when should we expect you referring it to Parliament for ratification?
After doing all the necessary checks and whatnot, I should believe that within the next...
So even if the necessary work takes you 2, 3, 4 years, we should be waiting for you. I need certainty of time because it's been signed. The headquarters is here. They are helping the country with their work and their research. Give me a date that you will come to Parliament for us to do what is constitutionally needful.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that we are, as I sit here, that's why I say I don't know its status. But I'm asking myself, why has it not come? There surely must be some problem, and I intend finding out. But barring every constraint, I believe that when we look at the way things work in our country, within 90 days, it should be able to come here.
But you know that the president is sending you there to solve problems, not to go and know the problems, but to solve them. So that's why I want a definite response from you. Will you solve the problem and get the agreement ratified? Then, after all, what will be the legal basis of us engaging in that relationship?
I believe I've given a response. I believe that an intelligent girl should be within 3 months.
Now, to the Honorable Ablakwa referred you to the United Nations Climate Decision, UN General Assembly 2019, and you know that because of the past US President politics, which was not based on multilateralism, the US as a major player took some unilateral decisions, which I heard you say that President Barney has promised to do. The commitment by developing countries, including Ghana, are we not just a consequence of their actions? And what will you do so that we become a major player? I mean, we talk about the matter of carbon emission. Do you have an idea how much Ghana contributes to that?
Carbon emission. Well, as a percentage of in the global standard, I don't think we contribute much. I used to have the figure in my head, honestly, but I do not want to put a figure that I can also substantiate it. Was it? I saw 40-something million cubic.
As Chairman, the President was so determined to fight illegal mining, popularly referred to as Galamsey. There was Operation Vanguard, which in my view was legal. There was your ministry also taking another group referred to as Operation Halt, which was working with the Forestry Commission. The other one, the Minister for Interior and the Minister for Defense. When you assume office as minister, will you rationalize and make sure that we have unity of focus in the fight against Galamsey? If we need to deploy the security agencies, you will not be working at cross purposes with your counterparts as defense and interior.
Indeed so, Mr. Chairman. And as far as I'm concerned, some of these entities have been withdrawn. So we have a clean sheet to it to start.
Now, the Environmental Protection Agency of your ministry, they need also staffing support, they need technical support for capacity. But the Ghanaian community or various communities in Ghana are complaining about two electromagnetic effects. One with telecom towers and its siting, and the consequence of lack of public education for them to appreciate how that impacts on their life. The second is fuel stations. You just have a community, then all you see is a fuel station coming out in a neighborhood that they get frustrated and they don't get what you call institutional support that supports the protection of their lives. What will you do about it?
Mr. Chairman, the electromagnetic phenomena, I understand the scientific community, there is even not a consensus on the damage that is done to the human person and for living organism. That said, as a doctor, I will err on the side of safety. But EPA will have to conduct a scientific study, the Ghanaian situation, and come with recommendations. I understand steps have been taken in that direction. I don't know what stage they are now. I think it is being done by Ghana Atomic Energy Commission. Fuel stations, the story with fuel stations is a bit difficult. Built in built-up areas, there are others who set up, and then the community or the built-up area, so to speak, also got to them in the sense that there are specific distances that they should keep away. I'm not sure, even is there regard to, when you talk of fuel stations, the law with regard to petrol stations is a bit different from the gas stations. So we have to disaggregate the two. My understanding is that the fuel stations can be closer to communities than some. That's the gas, petrol, and diesel stations. The liquid gas can be closer to communities than we care to. Apart from public places like churches, mosques, schools, where you cannot build petrol stations. Indeed, the law is that if you are a private entity and you are living close to, even sharing a wall with petrol stations, it's not against the law. That's one thing I found out. If we have to change it, we have to change the law. But with regard to gas stations, there's a definite distance that it must be away from all built-up areas. That one, I forgot the absolute distance, but I can find out. That much I know. But again, which came first? Some people obey the law and build their gas stations far away from built-up areas. And yet it is rather the built-up areas which encroach and got near to the gas stations, and yet they cry foul. So the narrative is not as simple as people make them out to be.
Chairman, the Minister, you are given one side of the narrative. I agree with you on that leg. But there is the other narrative where homes are invaded or the EPA issues out licenses, and what those siting up the fuel and gas station is to hold the EPA license and say that we've been authorized to be here, but the community is saying that we have not been engaged sufficiently, or we do not agree with EPA going ahead with this activity. What will you do about that?
Mr. Chairman, that's why I'm saying that with regard to diesel and petrol, look at the law. If they can be permitted to build right to homes, but schools, mosques, so if the law is bad, we can change it. So they can cry foul, and I sympathize with them, but sympathy is different from law. Then, but when you're talking about gas stations, that is another kettle, and I think I've explained already.
Chairman, I love eating sweet potatoes, and in Ghana, we don't even encourage its eating. Chairman had a bite of it this morning. I see as part of the research, very different types of research going into expanded production of it. It is something that we easily can export to improve our foreign exchange regime, and it's something we can encourage its eating even in our domestic economy. What will you do to give meaning to the research findings on sweet potatoes in Ghana?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I believe that we have to collaborate with the Minister of Agri. That is where Mercy and Agri should put their money. The sweet potato is very nutritious, contains protein content compared to pure flour. And we should do our advertisement and promote consumption of that. In fact, we can incorporate it into flour in a certain ratio so that we can make it into bread. But we have to train our taste buds to get used to it so that people will patronize them. Even before we talk about export, yes, the export potential too is there. So I agree with you entirely, and that is where we can even improve farmers' incomes and help them out of poverty.
Chairman, my final question to the minister is, Ghana now has the advantage of producing oil and gas. Is there an environmental policy relating to oil and gas resources, its exploitation in our country, and what will you do if you become Minister for Environment on this matter?
Mr. Chairman, indeed there is a policy, I've cited a draft policy in various stages of development. I forget which stage it has reached. So that would be one of my duties, to make that it comes, we get the necessary things done and it comes to Parliament as soon as possible if legislation is needed so that we can deploy. It's long overdue.
Will your ministry conduct some need study? Solar, I know it's largely driven by policy by the Ministry of Energy in Ghana, but you are responsible for the environment. If you take from Navrungo, coming through Bolga, through Nasia, Savlogo to Tamale, as you have traveled extensively abroad, whether you are in Germany or you are in Switzerland, you see those solar things which uses like an electric fan. I don't know the technical meaning for it. My view will be that we should begin developing that kind of environmental friendly infrastructure to support the solar regime in Ghana. Can you give me an assurance, Minister Designate?
Ghana being in the tropical world, the potential for solar energy is huge. The only problem is the economics of it and the economics of it. Well, how they deployed solar panels in Germany might be acceptable to people. We should have a national dialogue. Whichever configuration is able to harvest the energy, that is our primary concern. Whether rooftops, whether we put in them on our garages, whether on standalone entities, whether in farms where we can even do, because some certain plants even need shading, and when they are well spaced, you can even harvest them, especially in rural electrification settings. That one, we have to have a conversation and dialogue and a closure on that.
Chairman, thank you, and I wish the nominee well.
Honorable nominee, well, I only wish to put this on record, that your life is a reflection of somebody who is prepared to acquire the knowledge, dirty your hands to achieve results. I wish you well in this new enterprise.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I thank all members. I appreciate what has happened today. I'm so grateful.
You're discharged. You hear from us.
I hear that the funds I spoke about is called wind veins. Thank you.